Thanks for staying with us. This next segment, we're discussing grief. Yesterday, August 30th, 2023, marked National Grief Awareness Day. It's a day set aside to educate people on grief and create space for loss. Joining us on the show is a grief educator and advocate, a certified advanced grief specialist, certified grief-informed professional from PESI, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, USA, Joanne Pandey. Welcome to the show, madam.
Thank you very
Good
much.
to have you on the show.
Thank you.
I never knew there was anything called a grief specialist. Never even knew there was a course on that. But it's interesting to know that grief actually can be something that can be mastered in a way that you can help somebody through it. Mm-hmm. Tell us, why do you think there's need to help somebody through grief?
Okay,
or can we even define grief first? Because maybe we don't even know what grief is.
Okay.
Let's start with the definition of it.
Okay, so grief is it's a normal, natural, intense, feeling of sorrow you experience when you go through when you experience a loss, and this could be death-related or non-death related. Okay. Yeah, so that's what grief basically is.
Okay, so I feel this, when coming to talk about this is so close to home, because we had a conversation, we had a vigil in my unit in church, and the vigil was supposed to just give people the opportunity to unburden, because we felt like many people were bottling a lot of things, only for the vigil to turn into the first person that spoke about grief. As in, I cried for like almost 1.5 hours, because people were just sharing how they've been holding on to the grief, how they cry by themselves, how they have to be strong for their parents. Like several stories. I'm talking 10, 15 people. I'm in a crowd of 20. It was like 80% everybody was going through dealing with grief, and they did not understand how to overcome it. So we don't talk about this enough. True. So I would like you to help us understand. We read stages of grief, but how do you even come to terms with the fact that you've lost someone or you've lost something and you are unable to move on from it?
Okay, so basically, of course, grief affects you emotionally, psychologically, physically, relational, spiritually. And so when people, experience whatever loss, whether death-related or non-death-related, the initial shock, especially when it's, death-related now, the shock that they get, depending on who the person was to them, what relationship they had, the age, and then they are not able to cope well because of that, either the attachment style that they had, and then because also the culture and the society does not allow people to voice out, because you have all sorts of grief. You have, like what you mentioned now, I could pick that. There's disenfranchised grief. So someone has lost a parent, maybe a dad or a mom, and then they're not acknowledging that child, but they are saying, oh, you have to be strong for your parents. No, not your parents, because I remember when my mom died, when everybody came, nobody asked me how I was. They were like, your dad, because he's 80, you have to take care of him so that he doesn't die, And here I'm like, I just went through a traumatic experience, watching her die. So that it makes it difficult for people to be able to, move forward, with life, integrate the grief and all of that.
So where do you come in for people who are having difficulty with expressing their grief? How do you come in?
I come in, as a specialist or as a counselor. So when people, when you are finding it difficult, because sometimes we say, okay, the first primary level you go to is your friends, family, colleagues, support. But when you find out that you are still stuck in either of the phases, of grief, then you need a professional to come in to help you, to unpack and unburden.
Sorry. How do you know? Okay, I'm asking this because there's some people we've heard who say, I didn't realize I was even dealing with it until I sat with someone, all of a sudden the floodgates opened. So how do I, myself, or if a family member or a friend notice that they may need counseling, what do I see that they're dealing with? apart from the traumatic event itself, like what behavioral symptoms do I see to then advise that they see someone like you?
Okay, so if they're preoccupied with the thoughts of the deceased, you know, and they just can't, well, according to the DSM-5, which is like the Bible of psychiatry and things like that, you know, they say grief is, although there's no timeline in grief, that's why we're still arguing with them anyway, but they say for kids it's 6 months and for adults it's 12 months, whereby after the loss you are inhibited, you can't even go about your everyday activity. It's, you know, hindering every aspect of your life. You're not socializing anymore. You can't even get out of bed. Is that bad? Some people can't even get out of bed.
They get into depression.
Yes, and then they get into, depression. Not the clinical depression, yeah, of course.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Okay, I was
You
going to
suffered
say,
from this.
sometimes, I think with men, for instance, men suffer it more because they always say, you are a man, you have to be strong, don't cry. So most men, when they lose loved ones, they don't let it out, they don't cry, they are strong. And then, do you think that there is a psychological effect on these men? Like, I'll give you, my mother died in 2002. My brother did not cry till like 2016. And it was something that just triggered it. And so, do you think that after that, those tears,
You must have gotten...
he got relief?
Do you think crying helps
oh yes.
with dealing with grief?
Well, cry, that's one of the ways, of course, to let out them. Because crying is very therapeutic. You know, it's cathartic. It helps you to release those stored up emotions. Those chemicals that come out of, you know, in tears are actually very therapeutic. So, but it's not everybody who cries because you have different types of grievers. So just like you have your right-handed person and your left-handed. So it depends on when a client comes in and you're assessing the client. I check for, okay, so where are you leaning towards? Where do you lean towards?
What are the ways, other ways?
What are the types of griefs, people? What are the various types of griefs?
Oh, there's so many. Okay, so I talked about disenfranchised grief. There's masked grief. There's inhibited grief.
There's what grief?
Masked.
What
You
does
know,
that mean? Mask.
it's masked.
Oh, M-A-S-K.
Yes,
Okay, yeah, okay.
grief. There's inhibited grief. There's traumatic grief. And, you know, just lost. Anticipatory grief, you know, that's when, okay, so someone is going to go through a divorce eventually.
And they're
So
already
the process, they're already grieving. You get a diagnosis on health, cancer, dementia, Alzheimer's, you know. So they go through that. That means there's a loss already before the actual loss, the demise of that person, or the breakdown completely of the
My
marriage
question,
or
therefore,
relationship.
is how... So there's somebody right now watching television, and she just lost a loved one, either a child, or spouse, or mother,
Parent.
and he or she is
Doesn't
traumatized,
know how to deal.
doesn't know what to do next. Now, what kind of support can family give? Because usually when somebody loses somebody, you don't even know what to do. You go there sometimes, and then it is well, you know, God's time is the best, or you know, all sort of things. People say all sort of things. They don't know how to help somebody who is grieving. You just want to be there for the person, but you don't know what to say. So as a grief expert, what do you think? How can we help somebody who is grieving? What kind of support system do we give them? Okay. How do we equip ourselves?
Well, okay, before you refer the person to a professional, what you can do is take initiative. So you know this person before the death. Maybe the person was a married person. They have kids, you know, rather than say, oh, if you need anything, give me a call. Hello? That person is never going to give you a call because they're so occupied with that pain. So you take the initiative as a support, you know, system.
Food, keep the children.
Bring food, take the kids to school, you know, help out, come to the house, you know, all of those little things. Like when my mom passed, I didn't even realize that I would need soup at home. I just knew the kids were going to school, but a friend bought a cooler of stew. And that's when it dawned on me. I'm like, that's true. We need food in this house. You know, so sometimes people who are grieving don't even know. And then when you see that they are not their usual self, you can speak to them. Because I was talking about the types of grievers. Some people are, you know, introverted, so they're instrumental grievers. They process their grief through thinking, you know, and they rather get into activities, you know. But, and then you have people who are intuitive grievers, they process their feelings by talking, you know, so they
Give them someone
I fall
to talk
into
to.
that category, you know. So whether you wanted to know or not, when my mom died, I was talking. I would tell you how it happened, how I walked into the hospital and she passed. That was how I was coming to terms with her death, you know. So, but of course, none is good. But you have to oscillate between the two to get the balance. So, but when you see that, especially for the introverted people, it is hindering their life. Just you can recommend, pay for the services for them, because most of the clients I have, people pay for them because very few times
would you be
they
able to think
accept
of it
that
by yourself?
I really want. So that's it, you know.
So there are a group of people that I worry about.
Okay.
The ones that you just don't see any sign of grieving. You know that this person has gone through
And they are not doing anything or saying
they're not doing
anything.
anything, and they are working hard. In fact, that's when they put in their best, or they put in all their energy and their time just doing, but you know that they haven't stopped to grieve. So is that healthy, or do you find a way to help them facilitate grieving?
That's not healthy. So they tend to lean towards the instrumental type of grievers. But what they can, I mean, before, I always say the professional is always the last, you know, leg. They can journal. Some people are creatives. They can draw, you know, music. They can get into dance. So you can suggest all of this.
The things you know
and then they
will
have
help
to
them.
come, yes, and then they have to come to accept, because that's the first basis for healing.
So this is very close to home for me. My mother-in-law passed about 3 weeks ago, and I just feel like my husband is so okay. You know, I keep asking him, like, how are you doing? Like, I've asked over and over, and it's like, he's fine. But I just feel like we've not gone through, you know, because I am a crier. I'll be crying, and if I know that crying helps me to let go of that emotion, but I don't know how to support in that space, and that was what mine was. And I don't really even think I can suggest fun things for him to do. It doesn't feel appropriate, because, like,
I'm good.
yes, he's saying he's good, and he's actually looking like he's good, he's behaving like he's good, and he's going on. It's not me that is reminding him again and again that Mama's gone. So I'm the one over-grieving the situation on his behalf. So how will someone on the side like that react? How can I best support that? How can I deal with that kind of situation, since I'm not feeling the grief the way I feel it should be, grieving the grieving?
Thank you. Well, that's good that you said you are trying to judge him based on your own type of your grieving style. He's different. So you have to let him, give him some space, you know. Has she been buried? She hasn't. Okay, fine. So he's still probably trying to come to terms with it, because when the loss is 3 weeks ago, so he's probably still in acute grief, you know, and all of that, which is like the first few days, weeks, and months after the loss. So maybe when he eventually sees her being buried, it doesn't follow anyway. Some people can, you know, very small percentage of people can actually, you know, just learn to integrate. They accept quickly, and it depends on how old she is.
She's
so
old.
if she's advanced, so I mean, he can quickly.
One of the reasons why I
integrate
wanted to ask about the different types of grieving is because we've seen in our culture where somebody loses someone and they're rolling on the floor and they're explaining and wailing, and people say, yes, she really, really, really missed this person. And then another person is holding her own. Something happened, and family thinks she must have killed her husband. She's not crying. She's not wailing. She's not screaming. She's not rolling on the floor. And she just has that kind of inner strength to just stay whole. So it's important that we talk about grief, because people must know there are different types. That's why you have to give us some kind of understanding of the various types of grieving, so that people know the various styles, actually, so that people know that there are different ways. For someone like me, where my mother was sick, like 8 weeks or 10 weeks before she died.
She did that.
And the moment, so during that period, I was trying to get her. It's possible I was already grieving already. Possibly. So when it happened, I couldn't just cry. I was in project mode. Get the funeral, all that needs to be done. My brain was on project mode. And honestly, I think it was only during one of the meetings I had with the planner talking about they'll take the cups from here. When I heard cups,
it dawned on you.
just I lost it. You know. So, but But I also believe that not totally fully come to terms with
But
it.
you never
because-
come, that's the funny thing. Grief never ends. It never ends, but the pain wanes. That's it. The intensity of the pain will wane over time if you process it rightly. But that grief ends, it doesn't end. I mean, you lost that's your mom, that's your father, that was your brother. You had the relationship. And that's why I always say, let's stop using the word, move on now, you should move on. No, rather in grief, we say you move forward with life. So that's when the person learns to integrate the loss with their everyday living, and then they can respond to joyous occasions, and all of that.
My sister died 26 years ago. I still
And she
cry.
still talk about it.
That's it.
Like,
Yes,
yes,
yes.
I still cry.
And-
If I talk about her, I start to cry.
Yes, because she was part of you, So, but what we see is that people try to tell people how they should grieve. I mean, you mean 26 years ago that she died? Come on, you should have. It's very.
Or they'll say things like, she's now at peace. She's now out.
Those words. Or actually, when you go, I know. I'll shake this table, especially for us as Christians. When you go and see somebody, please, these things are empty platitudes. You don't say the words, it is well. At that point, it is not well with that person. We understand what you mean.
Okay,
and then
so
if
what
we
word
need to,
should you say,
I am
please?
I am so sorry for your loss. It's just okay. And if you don't have anything to say, silence
Keep quiet.
is golden. And take your cue from the griever. So if you go and visit and the person is willing, and then please don't ask what happened. We want to, because the human mind can't really wrap itself around the finality of death. So you want to know, especially when the person is young, what happened? Sometimes that reliving that thing for some people is trauma. So just take your cue from the griever. But if you're somebody who likes to talk like me, the gist was everywhere.
So don't ask it. Wait,
take a cue, exactly, and then don't say be strong, because that person doesn't even know how to be strong.
My son-in-law
at that
lost
time.
his mom on Sunday.
Oh,
And he wasn't expecting. It was a massive stroke. She had the stroke in the morning. By evening, she was dead. And I couldn't call him because they don't live in Nigeria. I couldn't call him because I didn't know what to say. So I waited till late in the evening, and then I'll read the text I sent. So shocked and sad to get the news. Please accept my heartfelt condolences. Not sure you will feel like talking. Take good care. We'll speak tomorrow if you can.
That's so sweet.
Was that an appropriate message?
yes, yes, and that's also part of the grief etiquette. So reach out immediately, through text, calls, and all of that. And that was just appropriate, nice. So maybe through your daughter, you can find out how is he willing to talk.
He's not even willing to talk.
He's not willing.
now.
Okay, fine. So they can leave him, let him, because the shock. I always tell people it's something else.
All right, let's talk about culture shocks. Where I
But-
come from. When someone passes,
Okay.
you are in mourning. Everywhere is quiet. You come, you greet in a nice, quiet voice. You pay your condolences and you go. Come to Lagos. Somebody dies. They are throwing party up and down. You're
cooking every day.
And I'm like, what is happening here? I've had someone who, my former boss, when I was working in the bank, he lost his mom. And people came to say, you don't chop your mama. I was in shock. I was like, what is this?
It's not a joke.
But it was a joke to them and they understood. So I don't get it. I don't.
It's the ones that cry more than the bereaved that I don't get. They will enter the house. Yeah! You didn't even know the person that would, yeah! And they'll be looking. So me that I didn't cry when I entered.
Am I the devil?
They will throw themselves on the floor. Hey, I love her so much.
No, but why?
More than
We say
person.
we shouldn't judge. She already said we
And
should
then
I
judge.
know. I didn't say that's not the person.
And you drink,
And you forget the tears will just dry up immediately.
and they bring amala, and you are swallowing the amala. You are eating the rice and the meat, and you just cried, but you are eating it.
I say I've seen
We shouldn't
somebody-
judge them still.
I guess you already know what it is.
I've seen somebody enter a house where the parents, the mother died or someone, I can't remember. And she entered, she threw her bag down, fell on the floor. She didn't cry coming.
Come in.
She didn't come in crying. She just entered. Yeah!
I have them plenty.
Well, maybe the reality,
can say.
maybe the...
Maybe entry the room.
Yes,
the shock.
and then you see the picture, you know, by maybe the entrance.
Yeah.
It now drives it. You know,
Yeah.
there's this thing at the back of your mind that it's true, it's not true.
Yeah.
I'm going to confirm it's true, it's not true.
okay.
Can it be? You know, I mean, because even years after, I mean, I experienced it also. There were days it would just come like a flash, and I'm like, are you telling me my mom is really dead?
Let me take this call from Rose. Good morning, Rose. Thanks for calling from Jos. Oh, I'm so sorry, Rose, for keeping you. Apologize.
So, so that we're not just gisting. It's important that there are people that mourn different things. You know, people mourn loss of family. Some people mourn. Somebody was saying that she mourned the loss of a friend, that she's lost both parents, but that she mourns the loss of a friend more than she mourns the loss of her parents. And because her friend, there was like a tight bond with a friend, how she and her friend had planned how they were going to dress for their kids' weddings. And so she's wondering, how am I going to attend my children's wedding? Like, we had painted the entire picture. So she's constantly grieving her friend's loss, and she's unable to even be a mother to the children of her friends. And that is another guilt that she's feeling. So she's feeling she's lost her friend, and then she's feeling like I should be a mother to my friend's children, and I can't even look at them and, like, I'm not rational. How can such a person move forward is the word, and be able to stand in the gap and be a mother to those friends, the friends' children?
Okay, so how long ago was this?
I think it's about almost 5 years, yeah.
Okay, so it's very possible. She has to come in for assessment before. I wouldn't want to just diagnose that. She's probably having PGD, prolonged grief disorder, because we see that. Yes. So.
What are the symptoms of PGD?
Okay, so her not being able to go on with life. You know, the things she's supposed to do normally. It's one of the major criteria.
Somebody not being able to marry. I read one on Instagram. The lady said she...
Let me pause for a second. I have a call been holding.
Not
wanting to. She was in a relationship and she jeopardizes relationships.
Let me take a
There's
call.
a call and I have to read some messages.
Patience from my papa. Thanks for calling, Patience.
Hello, good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
Yeah, my name is Patience. I'm calling from my papa.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm interested in this topic because I have an issue that happened last year. I lost a son of 7 years. And I said I lost my son of 7 years. And I try to, at times when I want to grieve about the boy, you know, people will come and tell you, it's okay, don't say anything. If you say anything, you sin against God. You will do this, you will do that. And, you know, it pains me up to this very moment that I find it difficult to grieve about the boy. So my question is, how do I go about it? Because it's eating me up gradually. In short, like the whole day I can be sad that I don't even know how to go about it. And next month we mark it 1 year. But this side of me, I know that I'm grieving, I'm dying silently. So how do I go about it?
Thank you very much, Patience. Sorry for your loss. Really, our heart goes out to your family. But let me come to our experts here. How do you help someone like Patience in this matter?
Okay, so from what she said, so she's probably having some inhibited grief because of culture. Okay. Culture is the one holding her down. You know, I would say first and foremost, free yourself. Patience, right? That's her name.
Yes.
Yes. Please, I mean, nobody should tell you how you should, especially because you see, when death occurs, you have a lot of existential questions. You question why you're alive. Is there God? If God loved me so much, why did he take my son? You know, and then as a parent, there's the issue of guilt that creeps in very silently because you are supposed to protect. So you feel you let your child down. You know, this child died. It shouldn't have. I should have. I could have. You know, and all of those halves comes in. But, you know, she would also need to come in for us to do assessment, you know.
All right, talking about
listen to all of that.
Losing a child, especially in our culture, one of the hardest things, well, I don't know if it's hard, but the truth is that in our culture, they don't allow you to bury your child, you know, and abroad, you see that the parents almost find closure in burying their own child, saying that, okay, they get the cemetery, look at the child, and they hand over to God or whatever. But in our culture, you're not even supposed to see the child, know where he was buried. And sometimes people find it very difficult. I remember somebody was saying that was the hardest part of losing her child, that she can't even go to talk to her child. She doesn't know where the child was. It was a taboo for you to know where your child was buried. How do we, in your own, as an expert in this regard, do you think is the right culture, or do you think we should really reconsider where in this kind of situation?
It's really not, and that's the part of advocacy too that I, do. And I say, let people grieve. Don't tell people the way they should.
Exactly.
Let them. If she says she doesn't want, I can't look at the child. Fine. I can't look at the spouse or the person, whoever. Some people, even adults, they're like, I don't want to look. Fine. And if the person says, I want to,
don't say culturally
then
it's not allowed.
Exactly. Yes, because you see, that also can contribute to PGD, prolonged grief disorder, and because the questions will keep coming in, into their minds, plaguing them. Where's this child? How did the child look? Eventually when they were in the coffin and things like that. All of this, preparing for the burial and funeral service are part of the mourning process, that helps you to start coming to terms with it. These things cannot be seen because they are intangible. We don't know that it has a lot of effects on the person. Even the person, you don't even realize it yourself.
Yes.
That these things are very therapeutic and has a lot of effect, positive effects on you.
Let me take Kelechi and I'll come to you, Mariam. Kelechi from Shasha, thanks for calling.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, ladies. Please, I want to speak to two people there. Number one is your guest and YK. Please, let me start with YK. YK, I will say congratulations for using your influence to draw the attention of the governor in your place. Please use the same influence, draw the attention of Tonguolu to Katangwa market, because that market is something else. I have written about it and I have complained bitterly about it. That's apart. Now, I want to ask your guest speaker a question. Please, I know that what causes this grieving or depression-related issues, that is sentimental attachment to certain things. Now, I want to ask, is it possible to live a detached life from issues of life, from material things, just live the life free of all this sentimental attachment? If it is true, please tell us how. And because of these issues Christians go through, I query Christian faith, because for me it holds no water. So please advise me, how do I go about it?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
He said grief might be because we are living sentimental lives and attachments to, we are living a life of attachment. That can you just decide to live? Is it possible to live a life without any attachments and no sentiments and just be able to let things go?
Well, I would say that's not possible, because as human beings, we are created, to have emotions and have relationships. And I guess I would, because you see, this thing runs very deep. I would question that thinking belief, yes, that belief system. What did you go through from childhood? Because sometimes a lot of people, that's why, they say grief is everywhere. Some people don't even recognize it, so.
The detachment is a grief.
Yes, that's a coping mechanism, a negative coping mechanism. Over time, he probably has used. So what happened that created that kind of belief system that you have, that you shouldn't be attached, to anything? Because even as Christians, like I said, even Jesus grieved. He wept. He showed emotion. Because human beings are relational.
Yes, I just wanted to say I have my personal experience when my grandmother died. I was here in Lagos. I had to go, and I remember when we were supposed to go to the hospital, the final, take care of her interment. I was so afraid to go. I did not think I could cope seeing my grandma in a casket. But then I went. My mom walked around. And when I saw her, she looked so different from how she was. And that gave me peace. I'm like, that's not my grandma in the casket going into the ground. And, you know, I brought it up because she was saying our culture, you know, would say parents should not see. But I've also seen Oyinbo people, like, if you
lose the baby.
if the accident was such a traumatic one that affected the person's physical being, they won't want you to see. They will say, you hear things that it's best to remember that person as you knew them, not as they were. Yes. So the thing is, from what I'm understanding, you can clarify that it's best for a person to choose.
Yes, that's it.
How they would want to grieve.
Exactly.
And in doing that, I mean, how. So you don't. So I think I'm trying to say, what do we say to society? What do we say to Nigeria? What do we say to when someone decides, see, I'm insistent, I want to grieve this way?
Let them be. Let people be. And funny enough, the interesting thing is not just prevalent alone with Nigerians, even abroad. Because, I mean, most of the courses that I do, and you have all the lecturers coming in, you know, and they're telling you, because they're also going through therapists too, you know, and all of that, they see clients. And you hear these things. And I'm like, oh, okay, so it's just a human nature thing, you know.
Because when my sister
Let me take this
died-
call, Let me hang. Amarachi calling from Bagada. Thanks for calling. Oh, we lost that call. Go ahead, Waike.
When my sister died, I didn't want to see the body, and then I just looked but I always regretted that I didn't kiss her and say goodbye. So when my mom died, she died 5 years later, and I must say my mom never recovered from my sister's death. I think that was what even aided her death.
It's possible.
She was only 60 when she died. I made sure I kissed my mom before she was cremated, and I got peace from that.
I have a few comments
That
here.
peace that I didn't get with my sister.
There's a man, Mr. Kennedy Adetola, was saying that, listen, I'm still grieving. He wrote it about 10 times. So even now that he's watching, he's grieving because he lost his wife. I'm using glasses because I was literally crying every moment her thought crosses my mind. And she just wants to know, he wants to know, ask the lady how men can overcome the loss of their spouse. I mean, that's a connection that many of us can understand. We understand the connection between a man and a woman. So in a situation where you lose a spouse, how do you overcome, especially for a man?
For a man.
Yeah, yes, exactly, because
For a man, it's terrible.
culturally, we're already saying, no, men don't grieve, men don't cry, and all of that. Okay, so I would say, if you've experienced a loss before, or how were you able to deal with any kind of loss, you know, that shows you resilience, you know, because there's something we call loss of time. So, you know, there are different techniques we bring in, you know, that to help a client. So it's not the one-size-fits-all treatment, so to say. So, but I would say, okay, so how are you able to deal with loss when it occurs, if you've ever experienced, and then your support system, how do you let out when you are even stressed naturally? You might not feel like doing those things now, you know, but little by little. I remember, you know, I listened to a lot of skits, you know, both international. It helped me.
Right.
And then one thing that happens is fear comes, you know, when fear of the future and all of that, insomnia, you know, so these irritable bowel syndromes, headaches. But I know, and I would love to say, because she's mentioned something that her sister died before her mom, and she feels it must have contributed. Yes, I always say grief. It's even proven, you know, that grief either exacerbates an existing illness or triggers an entirely new illness, because it's emotional, and we've seen, you know, through
emotions,
research that 70 to 90%.
We have to wrap up soon. There's something that came up that I wanted to ask a question, but
Okay, so you know, it's a deep topic. We have many angles. Some people were talking about grieving, partner grieving. Some people grieve children. Some grieve a mixed abortion. You got pregnant and then the baby didn't even form.
Yes,
then you grieve stillbirth.
People grieve infertility.
But people
Yes,
grieve.
pets.
People grieve a loss of a job.
Yes,
You know, people grieve things that you would see is not. They didn't die.
Yeah.
But there was an opportunity
a
and
loss.
you lost it, and you can grieve that opportunity because you feel like I might never have this kind of opportunity
So I think,
again.
because we're going to be wrapping up talk, but I think it's important for us to, this conversation is important for Nigerians to understand that grieving happens in different ways.
Yes.
And a lot of people
That's
to
why-
grieve.
Yes.
They have to in
Yes.
certain situations.
Exactly.
My concern is the modern time we're having social media. Many people, when you lose somebody, you come online and you start talking. And we have this issue of Peter Doce and all drama going on. I don't want to go into the issues, but the truth is that you would think that somebody who's lost a son would be quiet. But sometimes people think that's how they're grieving. Just go on social media, posting this and posting that. For you, there are different ways. I'm just saying that. I'm not saying that's the right or the right chosen way, but in this modern time, people feel it's therapeutic to go online and spill your heart out, or talk about the person, or just say things, or just act as if it didn't happen. So there are different ways. So my question is, in modern times, when we see people grieve, when somebody grieves, and we see them display on social media, is that an indication that they need professional help? Or do you think it's therapeutic to express yourself, or to, maybe that is the therapeutic for them to get over this grief?
Yeah, it might be, because that's where they get...
Because I feel it's part of it, which is social media, that maybe I sometimes feel that because of social media, we distract ourselves from even actually grieving, and we prolong it. Do you agree? Just a social media question as well.
True, yes, because we can actually deliberately inhibit, because it's very painful, and grief is hard work, to go through. So, yes, somebody can want to come on social media and talk about it, because that way they might get the support. Because let's be real, sometimes you don't get support from your family or your friends or the people you think, or church or colleagues, sometimes. But I would say, you think about it, wait, because you would always have like a backlash. Are you ready for it, or why don't you give it some time? And for some people, it is. We really can't tell, they're who they are.
Just don't judge.
Like someone here said, when her mom died, I think, Fiona, she says they came and said, welcome to the club. She felt so hurt.
Yes.
Insensitive.
I remember somebody told me that. And honestly, I had made that mistake until, of course, you know in parts. And then I used to, when people die, the West here, we say omoloku and things like that. I've said it to people who die, So when my mom died, for me, for my mom died, when somebody said it to me, the way I snapped at her, and I said, don't call me that, because it felt like a knife pierced. Yeah. So I said, oh, so how did others feel when I said it? So I say, sometimes don't say these things. But it also depends on the individual. Yeah. Some people might not cringe. Some people might cringe. If they cringe, and grievers, please, let people know what you want, and let people know how they can help you.
Let's take a few comments on social media before we wrap up. I know that there might be some questions.
20 comments. So.
Let's take a few comments.
Very deep.
We have to wrap up very soon. I was going to read something from a friend of mine. I wouldn't mention, I'm not sure she's still grieving. Let me just see her message here. She had sent me a message midnight a few days ago. She said, Mariah, I don't know how you handle it. Sorry, it's midnight. I lost my mom exactly 3 weeks ago. I'm so pained. I've lost 7.4 kg in 3 weeks. She was my best friend. We spoke daily. I'm the last born. More painful was that she was supposed to come to Canada to meet them. She was supposed to leave, 2 weeks departure to her time that she died. I'm so overwhelmed. Can't eat, can't sleep, can't go to work, and she's really going through a lot. And this was just a couple of days ago. So she's grieving.
I know the person.
You know the person?
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I already said, it's the intent, it's the acute grief. It's very intense. This is when you feel like you're going to die. Your heart is going to stop. How am I? There's just the shock, and the numbness, is still there. But, like I said, and I told her already, you need to take it one day at a time. One day at a time. In fact, 1 hour at a time. Okay, so I got up from bed today. I was able to drive to work. Fine. Give yourself a break. Just take it one day at a time. And the shock, of course, was all the preparations and some personal things, that would aggravate. Because the relationship, the age, and all of that, our personality affects the way we grieve. For some people, their parents will die, and they're like, duh.
But this also makes me realize that in Africa, when you're grieving, you're surrounded by loved ones. But if you're abroad,
everybody's working.
No, but you
have to grieve alone.
You might sometimes. I always say reach out.
Not if you're African.
If you don't have friends and colleagues, of course, because of the kind of, then please reach out to a professional. So you need a safe, non-judgmental place to just unburden and talk. If you are in that category. But if you don't want to, some people, I say journal. There's power in writing.
Ah, I like that.
Serious power.
Yeah.
I have a client who I'm working with, and by the time we met yesterday, and she had some assignments, to do, and she was, sometimes the clients could read what they wrote to you, and sometimes it's up to them. And she was doing that. I could see the difference. She was coming to terms with it. She was accepting it. There was positivity in her statements, unlike a week ago. So there's power in journaling, writing. Write how you feel. Don't forget about grammatical errors.
Nobody is reading it, just for yourself.
Just write it.
We have to wrap up. Thank you so much. Oh my God.